morning. Welcome all of you again, particularly those of you that are visiting with us. This is our Friends Day, and we have a number of friends with us. Of course, we're friendly with each other too, don't get the wrong impression, but we're glad to have those who are not necessarily members here being with us today. Thank you for coming and spending time with us. Raymond Baron asked this question: what is a friend? He says, friends are people with whom you dare to be yourself. Your soul can be naked with them. They ask you to put nothing on, only to be what you are. They do not want you to be better or worse. When you're with them, you feel as a prisoner feels who has been declared innocent. You do not have to be on your guard. You can say what you think, as long as it is genuinely you. Friends understand those contradictions in your nature that lead others to misjudge you. With them, you breathe freely. You can avow your little vanities and envies and hates and vicious sparks, your meannesses and absurdities. And in opening up to friends, they are lost, dissolved on the white ocean of their loyalty. They understand. You do not have to be careful. You can abuse them, neglect them, tolerate them. Best of all, you can keep still with them. It makes no matter. They like you. They are like fire that purges to the bone. They understand. You can weep with them, sing with them, laugh with them, pray with them. Through it all and underneath, they see, know, and love you. A friend? What is a friend? Just one, I repeat, with whom you dare to be yourself. You ever struggle with friendship? Some of us, by nature, I believe, are more inclined to seek out friends. Some people, by nature, are less inclined to seek out friends. But regardless of whether we are extroverts or introverts, whatever our nature, or somewhere in between, we are social creatures, and we desperately need companionship. You know, when God created the world, God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And he took the dust of the earth and he formed man and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And God placed man in the garden, and God looked at his creation and God said, it's good. But then, as though God took a second look and said, it's not good that the man should be alone. I will make a help suitable for him. So God caused the deep sleep to fall upon Adam, took one of his ribs, and from his very DNA, God made a counterpart for Adam. And when Adam saw her, he said, this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. And when God saw the man and the woman he had created in his garden, God said, it is very good. We really need companions. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 4, verse 9, two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. I'm going to say again, some of us crave lots of friends. We are what people call social people. I mean, we have to have other people to be with us, to share our experiences. Otherwise, we're not fulfilled. We have to share it with others. Introverts, not so much so. They can go fishing by themselves and have just as good a time as someone like myself who prefers to go fishing with someone. I don't really care to go by myself. I'd like to be with someone. But some people can be alone, but not for long periods of time. Even the most extreme introverts need a friend, someone they can confide in, someone who understands and accepts them for who and what they are. Now, when we think about friends, and I have thought about it a lot, I think about people in my life that are genuinely my friends, have been friends of mine for years and continue to be my friends even today. I think about people that I thought were my friends, but over the course of time realized they weren't my friends at all. And I think all of us have probably been through those kinds of experiences. There are people that you assume are your best friend and you can share whatever you want to with them, and then you come to find out that whatever you share with them is going to bite you because they weren't really your friend. They pretended to be. You assumed they were, but they really weren't. They had another agenda. And that hurts. Or then again, maybe you're like me and you realize that you've had a lot of friends and you don't have so many anymore, and it's your fault. And so you think, well, I really struggle to hold on to my friend because I don't seem to be able to hold on to too many of them. I can make a lot of friends, but I can't keep them. And so what can I do to make more friends? I think all of us, whether you're like me and you struggle with such questions or not, we all long for companionship. We all need friends. I mean, one of the biggest industries today, and it's even in the news quite a bit, is Facebook. Well, what is Facebook about? Sharing with who? Well, you've got your list of what? Friends. So when you share your pictures of, the fish you caught or whatever, you want your friend to comment on it. Or if you're watching a ball game, you want your friend to say something nice and encouraging about the ball game. Thank you, Brother Tilden, for those kind and encouraging words last night. We needed them. But what is Facebook all about? What keeps it going? We're reaching out, we're long. Now, of course, we can argue Facebook's really not the answer because it's creating more problems than it does really solving anything. It's the bane of our existence in many respects. It's ruined a lot of marriages, it's ruined a lot of friendships itself because things are shared that are misunderstood, because that personal contact is not, and so on. You understand the problem with Facebook or any other social media. But it's an expression, isn't it, that we're reaching out, we're longing to have friends. So what can we do to have friends? Well, Solomon said, a man who has friends must himself be friendly. I'm not going to try to get off on this sideline here, but I couldn't help but notice last night when the camera kept focusing on Nick Saban. And I thought about how much everybody in football respects/hates that man. I mean, he is probably the best college football coach that's ever walked the planet. So if he's not your coach, you hate him. But you respect him. You understand what I'm saying? But have you ever seen the man smile? He's an outstanding coach. I don't think he would want to be my friend. That's what I feel like when I see him on the sideline. He looks very unhappy. My point about that is to pick on Nick Saban, but it's also to point out the fact that if you want to have friends, you might need to smile sometimes. Or maybe you should reach out and shake someone's hand. When I first started working with the county, I didn't know, I hadn't worked a job like that in many years. So my first day on the job, I walk up and I see other officers standing around. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? They're like, huh? I'm like, okay. And, well, good to see you today. And they're like, huh? I I said, you must be an Auburn fan right now. And I'm trying to make friends. I'm trying to break the ice. And it didn't go over so well. And I was kind of disheartened about that. One day, one young man who was a new guy just started working there. He walked up to me. I spoke to him. He went, and just like everybody else had done. I thought, man, you've fallen in that same rut like everybody else. But he walked up to me one day as I was getting ready to take my detail out. He said, I need to ask you something. So I said, why are you always so nice to people? I said, because I'm a hateful person, I guess. I mean, what do you mean, why am I so nice to people? He said, you always say hey. You always speak to me. I'm like, shouldn't we all do that? And I'm not suggesting that I did this, but I can tell you this now. The work environment is very different now than it was when I started working there. People talk, they're friendly, they joke. We even talk about politics sometimes. We're very careful about it. But I mean, we talk religion. So people are opening up and talking, but it begins with being friendly. And I know sometimes we get discouraged with that because, well, I tried speaking to so-and-so and they didn't speak back. And so maybe our tendency is, because we're self-conscious, to kind of recoil at that and say, well, I'm just not going to be friendly to people anymore because they're not friendly to me. We really, if we want and need friends, we really need to behave like a friend would behave. You can't expect to receive what you're not willing to give. And so this began with, if a man would have friends, let him show himself to be friendly. But I want to get more detailed than that. I call your attention to 1 Samuel chapter 18. This morning we'll be reading some select passages from 1 Samuel. But when I think about friends, I think about Jonathan and David. And I didn't realize, Jonathan, you were both Jonathan and David at the same time. So this lesson is about Jonathan and David. It's their idea. Okay, we blame you on. Glad to have you, by the way. David had killed Goliath, of course, brought great victory to Israel. And Saul, the king, saw this young man and the great victory that he had brought to Israel. And he took him. He asked, whose son is this? Where's he from? And they told him he's the son of Jesse, Bethlehemite. And chapter 18, verse 1 says that when he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan, this is the son of Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him go home to his father's house anymore. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even to his sword and his bow and his belt. I mean, this was instant friendship. And I've had people in my life that you just instantly feel comfortable with. You just know right away, there's a connection there. Maybe you hear them say something or hear them or see them behave in a way that you can totally relate to and you totally get, and you totally understand, and it's just like you just click right off the bat. And there have been many people in my life like that. I'm sure you probably have had similar experiences. But here's Jonathan and David immediately. I mean, right from the start, they are very close. But here's a secret ingredient. If you want to have friends and you want to maintain those friendships, the number one ingredient to true, genuine friendship is love. Jonathan loved David as his own soul. That's profound. There are a lot of perverts today that read text like this and tell us, I've had this said to me, Daniel Hominiak, among others, back in 1995, said to me, this was a homosexual relationship between David and Jonathan. It's disgusting for someone to say such things about these individuals. There's nothing in this text to suggest that kind of relationship. There was, however. genuine love. Now, the problem with us talking about these two individuals loving each other is the English language is not very precise. And so when we talk about loving someone, we think about all the aspects of love, that word that carries a lot of things with it. Hebrews had different words. The Greeks certainly had a word for everything. But the kind of love that Jonathan had for David was what the New Testament calls agape love. Agape love means that I want what's best for you. I'm interested in you. I'm interested in helping you, promoting you, encouraging you, supporting you, standing beside you. I mean, when you think about those expressions, doesn't that sound like what a friend is to you? I mean, they're your cheerleader, they're your support team, they're your encourager. They might sometimes be there to tell you, hey, you're stupid. You shouldn't have done that. That was just not really smart. Or, you're wrong to do that. A true friend will correct you. We'll say more about that in a moment. But the number one ingredient in any friendship is love. I want what's best for you, and you, of course, would want what's best for me. In Paul's letter to the Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 5, as he's describing love, among the other things that he says about love does not seek what? I'm not trying to promote me. I'm not trying to blow out your candle while I'm trimming the wax on mine to make mine brighter. By the way, you're never going to make your candle burn brighter by blowing someone else's out. It just doesn't work. And when people are your friends, they're going to try to help you shine brighter, not try to diminish your light. They're going to try to help you, and you're going to try to help them, and you're both going to shine brighter because of your friendship and because of your association. It's not going to be that I'm trying to get one on you. I'm trying to promote you. Philippians chapter 2. Paul said, I believe it's around verse 3, look not every man on his own thing, but every man also on the things of others. And then he added, let each esteem other better than himself. Isn't that what a friend does? There's not any competition between friends. Maybe some friendly competition, but there's nothing to suggest that I'm angry because you got one that I don't have, or you did something that I didn't do, or you're something that I'm not. Friends don't do that. Friends don't think like that. Friends are proud of their friends' accomplishments and achievements, and they support them in those things. That's what friends do. That's what Jonathan did, and we're going to see that as we continue reading more about this man. Turn with me in your Bible to Luke chapter 10. As we talk about love and how love expresses itself, there are two primary commandments when the law was given. And Jesus even said, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. And what were those commandments? Do you remember? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. So Luke chapter 10, 25, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what is written in the law? What is your reading of it? He answered and said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said to him, you have answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. That's straightforward. There's no ambiguity here. That's easy to understand, right? But it's almost like being in a Bible class sometimes. You can hear, okay, wait a minute, teacher, hold on. He, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? What is his question really? Who am I obligated to love? I mean, I want you to draw down and get down to the nitty-gritty, and I want you to tell me just how much I got to express this love, because as far as I'm concerned, it's on a limited basis, and I'm not going to just give it out to anybody, and it's not just free for everybody. So you tell me, who am I obligated to love? And how did Jesus answer that question? Well, he said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, took care of him. On the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? He answered, he who showed mercy on him. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. Now, it's interesting to me that when Jesus talks about loving others, that the hero of the story is a Samaritan. Now, if you were a Jew, hearing Jesus say this, you're probably, you don't appreciate where he's going with this. It just doesn't set well with you. It would be like trying to tell a story like this to Hillary Clinton and telling her that the hero of this story is a Republican who came along and had mercy. I mean, you just don't tell people things like that because, I mean, you're on the opposite end of the world for me. I don't care for you because of whatever. You fill in the blank, but I hate you because, and so Jesus takes someone that Jews likely would say is least likely to be my friend or someone that I express love to, and made him the hero of this story. Because it doesn't make any difference what your race, where you're from, or your culture. We are all human beings. And we all deserve to be loved as God requires. And this is the second great commandment, to love the Lord your God. Lord, your neighbor, rather, as you love the Lord your God, to love your neighbor as yourself. So, I mean, how do we gain, maintain, and continue with friendships? Number 1, we have to love those that we consider to be our friends. Now, what does a good friend do in the name of love? Let me ask you. Anybody can speak up. When you think about what you're looking for in a friend, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? If you need a good friend, what's the first thought about needing a friend that comes in your mind?
Somebody to be truthful to you.
Somebody to tell you the truth, okay. That's good.
Somebody to just talk to.
Exactly. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. So if you want a good friend, you have to be able to communicate with that person, right? You got to be able to tell them what you think. You got to be able to share your feelings, your thoughts. I submit to you that if you can't open up to someone, you may care for them, you may wish them no harm, but you probably wouldn't consider them your friend, your close friend, because you're not comfortable opening up to that individual and exposing yourself to that individual. You don't think they're going to listen to you. The best friends that I ever had are people that will let me ramble on and on like you do. I consider you all my friend because you let me ramble on and on. You never interrupt me. You don't say anything. You fall asleep sometime, but you don't interrupt me. But when I think about my best friends, I think about people that are willing to just let me talk. Because even though they may not have any advice for me or they may not be able to offer any solutions, they're listening to me. And sometimes we just need someone to be a sounding board, someone that's going to hear me. And I know that when this person is listening to me, they're interested in me. Maybe they can't help me. Maybe they can't fix my problem, but they're listening sympathetically to me. They care about what's bothering me. And they're there to support me in it. And vice versa. When they talk, I want to hear what they've got to say. I want to listen to their thoughts, their concerns, their feelings. They can share themselves with me, and it's okay. So when you think about why you need friends and how love expresses itself to a friend, maybe the first thing we could learn to do is the art of communication. How do you learn to listen effectively? How do I get to the point where I'm able to let you know that I'm listening to you? Now, some people, I'm not like this, but some people demand your attention. And so you're in a crowded room, there's 300 other people, and they're all talking, and there's one person, blah, 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 and they're like, listen to me. I'm like, well, I can't hear you. There's so many people, blah, blah, listen. I'm like, but I'm just saying, normal people, when they need a friend, they need someone they can talk to and just unload their feelings. Turn with me to chapter 19. Let's think about friends, how friends behave and what friends do. Now Saul spoke to Jonathan his son, to all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted greatly in David. So Jonathan told David, saying, my father seeks to kill you. Therefore, please be on your guard until morning and stay in a secret place and hide. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you, that what I observe I will tell you. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hands and killed the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood to kill David without a cause? Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, as the Lord lives, he shall not be killed. Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. I saw something the other day. A true friend is someone who defends you when you're not listening. When you can't hear what's being said about you, you know and are confident that whatever may be said about me, good or bad, that person that is my friend is going to defend me. Now, this was Jonathan's father. And he wasn't just his father, he was the king. And yet, because of his love and friendship with David, he went to David's bat. He defended David. He spoke well of David. Have you ever had someone you thought was your friend, and you later learned, not only were they not speaking well of me, they were speaking ill of me. They were trying to hurt me. They were trying to tear me down. I know that I have. I'm certain that you have. We have all had friends that betrayed us. In fact, there are songs that speak about Jesus himself. One of his chosen apostles certainly betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. How pathetic was that? That Judas would sell out his Lord, his master, his friend for a measly 30 pieces of silver. But he did. And I'm certain we've all had some Judas in our life that we were disappointed to learn about. Let's think about something else that a friend does. He doesn't just defend us and defend our reputation, but he's generous toward us. We could literally say Jonathan took the shirt off his back and gave it to David, because he did. Because David probably didn't have a whole lot, since he couldn't go back home right away. He had to have something, so Jonathan's going to take care of David and his needs. In 1 Corinthians 10:24, Paul said, let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being. And John said in 1 John 3:17, whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? So, certainly a friend is someone who's going to give you what you need. They're going to provide for you the things that are lacking in your life. So if you fall into hard times, who are you going to call on? Your friends. Because your friends are there to take care of you. And so if you want to have friends, you must yourself be friendly. Do you have someone that would consider you their friend and they fall in need and you tell them, well, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding? I mean, don't expect, if that's the way you treat them, for that friendship to continue, because it's reciprocal. If David is going to be helped by Jonathan, certainly David would also help, and vice versa. So it goes both ways, doesn't it? We're not just to be takers, we're to be givers as well. Now, there's one final thought here before we get away from Jonathan and David, from chapter 23. And this is verse 16. 1 Samuel 23. Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, do not fear. The hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows this. So that the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. What did Jonathan do for David on this occasion? What did he do? As his friend, what did he do? He encouraged him, didn't he? I understand that encouragement is something that no one in this room needs, but there are people out there in the world, you probably met some of them, that need to be encouraged. I know I'm being facetious, of course. One of the things that I've learned in working with inmates, and this is an interesting relationship as an officer working with inmates. I can tell them what to do, and they're obligated to do it. They have to do it. But when they do whatever it is I tell them to do, if they're not happy with me, or they're not happy with themselves, more importantly, you're not going to get very good work out of them. But if you can make them feel good about themselves, even briefly, if they trim the curb or trim the hedges or cut the grass in just the right way, and you can tell they're being careful to blow things away from traffic and show deference to people in coming and going from the facilities, and they do all the things that you've instructed them to do, and they're going out of the way to do. If you could just take a second to say, you did a really good job with that, I guarantee you go to the next stop, they're going to go out of their way to do even better for you. Now, you can take a different track, and you can say, all right, good job, let's go to the next spot, and I expect you to do better next time. You can do that. And sometimes I do that. I know you think that's hard to believe, but I sometimes do that because they know when I'm doing that I'm being facetious, but they also know that behind that, I'm actually complimenting them. So I'm the kind of person that, if you know me well enough, I can insult you and compliment you at the same time. And my inmates have learned that, and they appreciate that. But my point, to be serious, is people respond to encouragement. I know that I do. And I know that if I feel like I'm always having to dig out of the hole because I can't meet the standard that you set for me, I can never please you, I'm never good enough for you, eventually I'm going to stop digging. I'm just going to, what's the point? What's the point? But if when I'm digging, I make a little progress, man, that's great, you did great. And you feel that wind in the sails, and you get excited, and you want to do more. Isn't it grand to see Jonathan? Tragically, Jonathan never got to serve by David's side. That was his intent. That's what he said to David. Now, I'll be by your side. You're going to be king. My father knows this. Everybody knows this. You're going to be king. He's encouraging David because he knew David needed it. Brethren, we need to encourage each other more now than ever before. There's a lot in this world to tear us down. We don't need anybody else coming along beating us up. We get enough of that. We need to create an environment here in this congregation where when I come here, you make me feel good. I make you feel good. I want to be here because, man, it just makes me feel good. Because, man, when I get there, you said something so good about me that I want to get back because we need it. Our minds, our souls crave encouragement. And I'm saying this to you because I stink at this. And this is probably the weakest part of my character. And I'm not saying that to be self-deprecating. I'm just being honest with you. I realize it's a weakness of mine. I struggle with it. And the thing that bothered me most is I grew up in a home where my mother, every day of my life, said nice things to me. And I didn't deserve 90% of what she said. And she knew it, and I knew it. We both knew she was lying to me. But she would tell me, you're such a good boy. We both knew better than that. But she, every day, would tell me. And I think when I got to be a teenager, I said, why do you always say stuff like that to me? I mean, I know you're going to take that $1 million if somebody offered it to you. I mean, $1 million used to be a lot when I was a kid, you know. My mother said, I wouldn't take $1 million for you. I thought, well, come on now, you'd have to take $1 million for me. But what was my mother doing? Even though we both knew 90% of the time, she's just telling me this, she was trying to convince me. Whether she knew it or not, she was trying to convince me, and in fact, eventually convinced me, you're a better person than that. You have capabilities that you didn't think you had, because she kept telling me this. And eventually, I began to believe her. I can't think of a better friend that I've ever had in my life than my mother. You talk about friends, I mean, my mother's the best friend that I've ever known, who's constantly been there, defending me, standing behind me, supporting me, encouraging me. And my father's right along with her, of course. But how can you live your life as I have, growing up in such a positive environment, and yet I find myself struggling because I'm thinking all these nice thoughts about you all the time. I know you don't believe that. I think really good stuff about y'all. And I rarely tell you. I don't mean in the pulpit. I mean one-on-one. You know, I struggle with that. I mean, maybe you're like me. Maybe other people have the same problem. You want to say something nice, but you're afraid you come off sounding mushy. You know, I grew up thinking John Wayne's a hero. I still think he's a hero. I like the old man kind of stuff, you know. Clint Eastwood was a close second, but I mean, that's who I grew up thinking were, you know, the kind of people. So when you think about, man, you did such a good job with that. I don't know why, but there's part of me that just struggled with that. Why do I struggle with that? Why do any of us struggle with such things? The Lord commands us to encourage one another. The word that's used in the New Testament is edify. And that's literally what it means, to build up, to strengthen other people, to say nice things to other people. I know Brother Hunter last night was jumping out of his skin for joy because Satan was once again doing what he did with Alabama and somehow pulled out a miraculous victory in that game. I know that. And yet he actually said some nice stuff about Georgia publicly. That hurt, didn't it? I'm a nice guy. Well, okay. Let another man praise thee, not the... Anyway, I just think of all these proverbs, but yes, you are a nice guy. And I appreciated those kind words, but we need to learn. I need to learn. We all need to learn the art of encouragement. If you know something good about somebody, tell them. Say it to them. You'd be surprised what a difference you can make in somebody's life by just saying a kind word. Make all the difference in the world. Thank you all for your time and attention.